Well, I'll come to all three of you in a moment. Jeremy, I just want to talk to you, just pivot slightly. I read a column for the New York Post yesterday about this kind of farcical situation in America where universities like Harvard, who were literally just named the worst school in America for failure to exercise free speech on campus, now saying that the reason they allowed their students to all sign this absurdly offensive letter in the immediate aftermath of these attacks, effectively siding with Hamas, was because of their devotion to free speech. And the reason I think it's relevant for you to answer that is I know that you, as a company, you're producing your own children's content to counter the left and woke propaganda and so on. So it comes to me there's a neat link here. But what do you make of what's been happening in these universities in America?
Well, I think that the universities are in many ways victims of their own rhetoric. One of the dangerous things to do in life is to say things out loud, because pretty soon you'll have to defend them, and soon after that you'll start to believe them. And Harvard has been preaching this sort of intersectional hierarchy now for at least a decade and maybe more. The problem with the intersectional hierarchy is that someone has to be on the bottom. In the sort of name of equality or of fostering some sort of better sense of equality, they've created a situation where, you know, people who they see as having been historically in places of power now are at the very bottom and have been completely dehumanized. And one of the funny quirks is they think that that is sort of anti-majoritarian, anti-patriarchy. You know, in America, it's anti-Christian white male in particular, and that it protects minorities. But of course, one of the smallest minorities in the world is the Jews. And unfortunately, in every other way, they seem to fit more in positions of power. They tend to excel academically. They tend to excel in business. They're disproportionately represented in media, in education, in science, you know, in traditionally white collar and governmental type roles. And so the intersectional hierarchy being preached by these schools has left them in a position where, you know, the most probably hard done by minority of the 20th and 21st century somehow has been dehumanized by them. And they don't know how to get out of the way of their own bad thinking on this issue.
There was actually a professor at Cornell who was caught on camera doing this. I think we have it.
Hamas has shifted the balance of power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hamas has punctured the illusion of invincibility.
Yeah.
That's what they've done. It was exhilarating. It was exhilarating. It was energizing.
Exhilarating and energizing. That's a professor at a top American university. I found that completely shocking. A, that he would have that thought process, but B, he would be so brazenly free to do it in public like that.
Well, sure. I mean, if what that professor had said instead is that gender and biological sex are inextricably linked, he'd be out on the streets by now and never work again. Instead, he says that it's exhilarating to watch children murdered in their homes because of some sort of bizarre academic theory about power structures. Here's the thing. Strength does not necessarily connote virtue, but strength also does not necessarily connote a lack of virtue. Weakness does not confer upon a person virtue any more than weakness confers upon a person a lack of virtue. There are wonderful Jews in the world, and there are terrible Jews in the world. There are wonderful Muslims in the world, and there are terrible Muslims in the world. There are wonderful people in positions of strength. I think the West has done a relatively extraordinary job compared to other societies throughout human history. And there are terrible people in positions of power. We need only look to the ruling regime in China, among others, to know that.
And Jeremy,
what happens when you engage in this collectivism is you forget about the individual.
Right. We know a lot of this obviously starts from childhood. You as a company have decided to take on this, what you see as the indoctrination by the woke left of kids. Tell me just briefly about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things that we at the Daily Wire feel is that childhood has been sort of distorted. On one hand, we have this university system, as you were just discussing, that infantilizes adults. We refer to 23-year-olds as college kids, and we treat them like that, like kids who aren't responsible, who have no agency, who can't be held accountable for their own actions. On the other hand, we have actual children, actual kids, and instead of letting them live in a world of imagination and adventure and joy and wonder, we want to use them as political props. We want to march them in our rallies. We want to hold them up as some sort of symbol of the struggle against, you know, entrenched power structures or whatever the in vogue terms are. And what we believe at the Daily Wire is actually, why don't we let adults be adults, including 23-year-olds, and why don't we let children be children? And so we've launched this initiative, Bent Key, which is our new company, our new app, and it's just entertainment for kids. It's not overtly political. We're overtly political as a company, of course, but our content at Bentkey is not. It really is just a place where kids can sit down, actually enjoy entertaining content, and parents don't have to worry about having these sort of destructive ideas of the moment.
You know, Jeremy,
inculcated
I've got
into their
4
children.
kids, and I say hurrah to that. Honestly, I do. I'm sick and tired of these kids getting grabbed by people who think they know what's best for what these kids should be thinking and doing. It's ridiculous. I've got to leave it there, Jeremy. You've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for rolling with the punches earlier. You came on to talk about this, and we then brought you in to respond to what Bassem Youssef said. I think that was important. And I really
Thank you for
appreciate
giving me
you
a
coming on
chance
the
to
show.
respond.
Thank you very much.